Not that long ago, life was quite different from today. Religion, culture, and community were woven into the fabric of existence, inseparable from the land we lived on and the seasons we followed. Politics and ritual were one, rooted in place, not dictated by distant powers. But then something changed. Industrialization emerged as a promise of prosperity for all. More jobs, more things to make life easier via a way to produce more goods. But as it moved forward, it also did something else. It tore us from that previous world. It pulled families off small farms, herded them into cities, and rolled massive machines onto huge corporate farms to rape the land, turning fertile soil into lifeless dirt. We thought we were being modernized, but we were actually being farmed for our productivity, and it continues to this day. What was obvious at the time was that it was quantity over quality. Iain McGilchrist sees this as a relinquishing of a right-brained existence to a more left-brain dominated way of life when he says, "The left hemisphere's principal concern is utility. It is interested in what it has made and in the world as a resource to be used. It treats the world as a simple resource to be exploited. It's made us enormously powerful. It's enabled us to become wealthy, but it's also meant that we've lost the means to understand the world, to make sense of it, to feel satisfaction and fulfillment through our place in the world. Now we're trapped in a feedback loop that we cannot extricate ourselves from." J.R.R. Tolkien recognized this, and in his masterpiece Lord of the Rings, he gave us Middle-earth, a glimpse of older days on the verge of massive change. There we saw the Shire. It stood as a humble haven of self-reliant folk, tied to their soil, generation after generation of connection to a place. In contrast, we saw Saruman, fortified in Isengard, with its pits and forges, and mine of metal in wheels, with no regard for nature, willing to pillage the earth for power. The Industrial Revolution is behind us now. It has worked its way through almost every culture, but most noticeably through Western culture. It is so deeply rooted in our society that we can't even see it. Today we see globalism playing the part of Saruman, promising progress, but building a machine that uproots us from nature, community, and everything that makes us human. Paul Kingsnorth warns, "The machine is the sum of forces controlled by and for technology that have, since the inception of modernity, been uprooting us from nature, culture, and God." Globalism's noble goals, economic opportunity, cultural exchange, collective progress, are betrayed by its implementation, enslaving us to an endless cycle of growth while pushing us into 15-minute cities and claims of "you'll own nothing and be happy." Globalism's stated goals sound like a utopia. It promises economic prosperity through open markets and lifting billions out of poverty. It champions cultural exchange, weaving a global tapestry of ideas and traditions. It calls for collective action to solve shared crises. Yet the way these ideals are implemented reveals a darker reality. A system that enriches elites, erases culture, and ravages the earth. The machine, as Kingsnorth names it, thrives not on unity but on control, not on freedom but on homogenization, not on progress but exploitation. Consider the promise of economic opportunity. Globalism's free trade has grown world commerce from $2 trillion in 1980 to $25 trillion by 2022. With this wealth pools at the top. Multinational corporations like Apple or Amazon dominate, their CEOs earning millions while factory workers in Bangladesh scrape by on $2 an hour. In the UK, FTSE 100 firms reaped 260 billion pounds in profits in 2022. Yet real wages have barely budged since 2008, growing just 0.4% annually. In the U.S., corporate profits hit 11.4% of GDP in 24, projected to 9.4% by 2029, while wages for the bottom 90% grew only 28% since 1979, compared to 156% for the top 1%. Tolkien saw this coming in 1943. The bigger things get, the smaller and duller the globe gets, he says. This isn't the capitalism of small entrepreneurs, but the corporatism of the elite, the mass producers feeding off the labors of the working class, a truly nasty label for people who once supplied their own needs but are now burdened with supplying for the many others besides themselves. Industrialization began this, herding self-sufficient farmers into urban factories in the 19th century. Globalism scaled it up, creating a feedback loop where workers toil to buy from the same system that exploits them. The International Labor Organization estimates 160 million people are trapped in forced or exploitative labor, many as part of global supply chains. This obsession with growth defines progress in Western systems, where to not grow is considered a recession. But this cycle of boom and bust created by unsustainable growth traps us further. The 2008 financial crisis erased $2 trillion globally, spiking UK unemployment to 10% by 2011 and US unemployment to 14.8% in 2020. Yet recovery meant more growth. 895 billion pounds in UK quantitative easing and 4 trillion in US stimulus by 2022, inflating the wealth of the elite while workers struggled. This relentless expansion, demanding ever more resources, pushes the planet to its limits. 33% of global soils are degraded, and resource extraction is set to rise 60% by 2060. As Tolkien warned, the devilry of modernity has no brakes. It must go on faster and faster until it crashes. Globalism's economic promise fuels a machine that serves the few, not the many, leaving us chained to its cycles. Cultural exchange, another globalist idea, fares no better. The vision of shared traditions is seductive, but in practice it's a steamroller. Local languages, customs, and stories are drowned out by a global monoculture of Starbucks, Netflix, and English-dominated algorithms. Urbanization drives this up. In 1800, 10% of the UK lived in cities. Today it's 84%, with 60% in hubs like London. In the US, the rate is 83%, fueling sprawl that swallows rural ways and gobbles up arable land. Globally, 57% of people are urban, projected to hit 68% by 2050. Cities built for capital and labor sever us from the land, replacing nature's rhythms with concrete and screens. Kingsnorth puts it starkly. The machine offers us a deal. Surrender your roots and we'll give you shiny things to distract you. Tolkien's Isengard, with its great burning in scarred lands, foreshadows this loss of identity where the world becomes, as he feared, one blasted little provincial town. This is an exchange, it's erasure, turning diverse people into interchangeable consumers for corporate profit. Iain McGilchrist warns us strongly. The second vital component for human flourishing is our relationship with nature, which, until a couple hundred years ago, was something that people were inevitably close to. 99% of the world's population lived in close proximity to nature. Now that number might be less than half. A world in which we have excluded from our view the things that make the world mean something is bound to face a crisis of meaning. The promise of collective progress, especially on climate change, is globalism's most tragic betrayal. Governments preach sustainability while building infrastructure that destroys the planet. Global supply chains, vast highway networks, and electric grids sprawling from remote wind and solar farms that cover thousands of acres of arable land. Industrial agriculture, a globalist cornerstone, has degraded 40% of UK farmland and 33% of global soils, turning fertile earth into lifeless dirt. In the US, 11 million acres of farmland were lost to urban use from 2001 to 2016, with 6 million more at risk by 2040. Corporate giants like Cargill and billionaires like Bill Gates, owning 270,000 acres of U.S. farmland, control vast swaths, prioritizing monocrops over sustainability. Global shipping, vital to trade, accounts for 3% of CO2 emissions. International agreements like the Paris Accord bend to corporate interests, letting polluters offset emissions rather than cutting them. Kingsnorth calls this the triumph of the mechanical over the natural, the planned over the organic, the centralized over the local. The machine's growth-driven logic devours the very earth it claims to save. McGilchrist sums this up with this thought: things work well as long as the left hemisphere is carrying out what it's deputed to do by the right hemisphere. Unfortunately, we now believe that if we just had a little bit more power, which is the main purpose of the left hemisphere, to grasp and to get, if only we could do a little bit more manipulation, we would solve everything. But at the same time, we're making an unholy mess of the world in so many respects. We're destroying nature, we're destroying humanity, we're certainly destroying this civilization. This is globalism's dystopian shadow, a blend of 1984's control and Brave New World's conformity. Urban surveillance and corporate tracking echo Big Brother. Consumerism, with UK household debt at £2.1 trillion and US debt at $17.8 trillion, seduces us into complacency, making us imagine we're free while we're farmed for productivity. Kingsnorth warns everything has changed, and yet the real changes are only beginning. The next great division will be between people who wish to live as creatures and people who wish to live as machines. The deepest loss is our connection to nature, the ground of all things good and beautiful. We are a part of nature, and to remove humanity from our original context is to destroy what makes us human. Urban life raises mental health risks by 20%, while only 20 minutes in nature cuts cortisol by 18.5%. Globalism's cities and corporate farms sever us from the land where awe and meaning reside. But we can reject this deal. This isn't going back to medieval times, but following a more sensible approach, rooted in the resilience of ordinary communities. Tolkien's Shire shows the way. A modest community of self-reliant folk, bound to their fields and one another, proving resilience blooms from simplicity. This isn't a fairy tale, but defiance, a refusal to let the machine define us. In the scouring of the Shire, hobbits fought bitterly against Saruman's ruffians, tearing down his polluting mills and restoring their fields through raw collective will. They set to work with a will, and the land was soon green again, Tolkien writes, showing that what's possible when ordinary people reclaim their home from industrial tyranny. Real-world examples echo this. In UK, community-supported agricultural systems up 50% from 2015 through 2023. Connect people directly to farmers, rebuilding bonds with the soil. In the US, land trusts have preserved 56 million acres, countering the sprawl that claims 11 million acres of farmland. Community gardens doubled in the UK in 2010, and growing in the US cities like Detroit bring back nature to urban edges, fostering meaning and resilience. Globalism's massive distribution chains are fragile. When they falter, millions are at risk for starvation. The 2021 Suez Canal blockage disrupted $9.6 billion in daily trade, spiking food prices and leaving 13% of U.S. households food insecure in 2022. The UK faced empty shelves during the 2020 through 21 supply chain breakdowns, exposing the vulnerability of global reliance. But if one community faces disaster, nearby communities can become a lifeline. In the U.S., mutual aid networks during COVID-19 delivered food and resources to thousands. Tolkien's hobbits, self-reliant in their shire, embody this strength, rebuilding after Sauron's ruin without depending on distant powers. McGilchrist contrasts these two worlds of right brain and left brain living in this way. We've got this one world which is composed of things that are mechanical, useful, inanimate, reducible to their parts, abstracted, decontextualized, dead. And another world which is flowing, complex, living, changing, and has all the qualities that make life worth living. This rooted way of life, centered on place, nature, and human flourishing, counters the machine's growth-driven chaos. Continuous, uninterrupted growth has never been sustainable, but a sensible approach prioritizes stability over expansion, measuring progress by the health of our land and people. As Kingsnorth explains, the former culture emerges from the bottom up, from the combination of what I call the 4 P's: people, place, prayer, and past. Anchors that globalism uproots, but we can reclaim them. Small farms using regenerative methods can increase soil carbon by 15 to 28%, healing the earth rather than raping it. Local communities using community currencies can keep wealth circulating locally, boosting spending by 10 to 20%. These aren't just practical steps, they're a reclaiming of what globalism steals, a life where we belong to the land, not the machine. As Tolkien's hobbits showed, and as Kingsnorth urges, we can unmake the system, choosing a world where the good and the beautiful thrive, where we live not as cogs of the machine, but as humans, rooted in the earth that made us.